everyone, welcome back to Making Art with Mrs. Gordon. Today we will be making a hyper realistic depth drawing, so try not to fall into your work. First thing you'll need is a clean sheet of paper. You can use a white sheet of paper or a sheet of notebook paper. You'll also need a pencil to draw with. If you want to make your lines darker, you can use some type of Sharpie or color pencil. Today I'll be using a Sharpie. I'll be deviating back and forth between this thinner Sharpie and this darker one. And I have a few others, so if you see one in the video that I didn't just show you, it's just another type of Sharpie marker. You can use a black color pencil if you want to make lines darker later. And you will need some type of coloring utensil. So for me, I'm going to use markers, and I'm only going to use these two colors here. I'm going to use this light green and this dark green. You won't need a lot of colors for this drawing. You'll actually probably only need one, but I'm using two different colors to make the depth effect a little bit more realistic. I'll also be using a charcoal pencil for shading later, because it blends a little bit better than pencil does. But if you don't have a charcoal pencil, which most people don't, that's perfectly fine if you use a pencil or coloring pencil. And then you'll need some tissue or a small sheet of paper towel. You can use either or a blending step if you have one at home, which I'll show you what that is. This is a blending stump. If you have that, that works too, but that's a little bit more advanced, so a clean sheet of tissue or paper towel is perfectly fine. All right, so let's get started. So first thing you'll need to do is get some type of ruler. Sorry, I didn't mention this. You'll need a ruler or something with a straight edge, because we need to use this to create a lot of lines. If you had a chance to look at my perspective drawing, we will be using some of the vanishing point ideas from that, some of the perspective from that, in order to create this drawing. But very simple perspective, not as advanced as we saw in that previous video. If you haven't gotten a chance, at the end of this video, take a look. So first thing you want to do is we want to create a border around our image. So to create a border, to make it very simple, I'm actually going to just bring this paper up just a bit so you can see a little bit better. I'm going to line up the ruler with the bottom of the paper, so making sure none of the paper is showing anymore. Hold it steady, and then just draw a straight line across. I'm going to press kind of hard just so you can see it on camera. Then I'm going to repeat that step on the other three sides of the paper. All right, so after you've done that, we'll need to actually put in lines all throughout. It's kind of supposed to feel like bricks, but we're going to keep them pretty much square, the length of how a four-sided square would be. So we're not going to make them like bricks usually are, which are rectangular, at least not for our edges. We want to keep them square like how our corners are. So if you notice how where the line overlapped each other and it created a square in each of the corners, we're just going to recreate that all throughout. So you could really just use the width of your ruler, or you can just eyeball it. I would say it's approximately an inch in width. So if you want to use the ruler and just use the numbers, you can make a line for each inch. But to make this a little easier, I'm just going to line up my ruler to the line at the bottom. So I'm actually going to, let me turn it this way. So lining up my ruler with the line that's already drawn, then I'm going to draw another straight line. And I'm just going to repeat that step going all the way around. to draw all your lines, the paper isn't perfectly even across. Paper is about 8.5, regular white sheet of copy paper is about 8.5 by 11 inches in width and height. So your squares are not going to be perfectly, they're not going to all be the exact same size, and that's perfectly fine. If you notice, some of my squares are a little bit wider than others or more narrow. That's all right. It's not a huge deal. If that happens on your paper, you want to go back and fix it, you can, or you can leave it as is. I'm planning to leave mine as is. So the next step, we want to create a diagonal line from the upper right hand corner to about center of the paper. It can go a little further down than that, and your diagonal line can honestly be, it can be at any angle. It could be a very low diagonal, a very high diagonal, or closer to the middle. I'm going to put mine a little closer to the middle, not exactly in the middle or pointing directly down to the next point, but somewhat close. And you have to decide how far you want that line to go, because the floor at the bottom, the lower that diagonal line goes, the smaller our square at the bottom of our paper, which is going to be our floor, the smaller it's going to be. So you want to make sure you decide where you want your floor to be. If you want a larger floor or if you want a smaller floor. The smaller the floor, the more depth it will make, or it'll seem like it's deeper or further away. The larger the floor, it'll feel like it's closer to you. So just keep that in mind. If you really want to create depth and make it feel like it's very deep and very far down, you want to make a smaller floor. But if you don't really want to do that, a larger floor is perfectly fine. So from that upper right hand corner, I'm going to line up my ruler there. It doesn't matter where the bottom of the ruler is touching, it just matters where the top of the ruler is. I'm going to draw a diagonal line, and I'm going to stop just about right here. No, so I'm not right in the center. Center is about right here, so I went a little lower than that. And from there, I'm going to draw a straight line going across, which is a horizontal line, and then a straight line going down, which is a vertical line. So first I'm going to do the vertical line. I'm going to line up my ruler, make sure it's nice and straight. Then I'm going to go straight down, and then line up my ruler at the top of that at the diagonal line again, but this time going across to make my horizontal line. I'm going to go across. All right. So once I have that, I'm now going to put in the pattern on the floor, which is basically a checkerboard pattern. So we're going to make some vertical lines, we're going to make some horizontal lines. This again, there's no exact measurement. Make them as narrow or as wide as you want to make them. The more narrow, the more checker patterns you'll have, so the more coloring it'll be. The wider they are, the less patterns you'll have. So now that I have my floor, now if you notice I did quite a few, so I'm going to have a lot of patterns here, but that's perfectly fine. Once that's done, your next step is to put in your vanishing point. Your vanishing point should go, we're actually going to do two. So from the last video, if you got a chance to watch it, the last video talked about perspective and vanishing points. Vanishing point is basically an imaginary area where everything merges, or it seems like it's merging, in order to create this perspective that everything's just coming together. It looks like that a lot on streets, or anything where you look down a long road and there's buildings or trees. It almost feel like everything's merging to one point, which is called the vanishing point. So if you want a little bit more work on that, or just more detail on that, go to my perspective video to see a little bit more about that. We're actually going to make two vanishing points because we want both of these walls to have their own separate vanishing point. So this wall here at the top is going to have a vanishing point here, and then this wall is going to have one there. We can't let them both go from the same vanishing point because then it'll throw off the perspective of the bricks that we're going to create. So we're going to try to find center on this wall. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm guessing it's around this point. So I'm going to make a small dot on my border that I can later erase. So make sure, I hope you can see that, make sure you don't make it too dark because then it'll be very hard to erase later. Then this wall, I'm gonna try to find center again. And I'm gonna make a small dot there. Okay? So, once you have your vanishing point, before we actually start merging things to it, we do need to put in lines on our walls. So we're gonna actually end up putting, on this side I'm gonna do vertical lines, and on this side I'm gonna do horizontal. Okay? So let's start on the right wall. Now, the closer, so this border we have is technically closest to us. So any brick that we draw is going to be larger, closer to the border, and smaller when it's closer to the floor. So we want to make sure our lines start off pretty close together, but as we work our way up to our border, they should spread out. So I'm going to start at the floor. I'm actually going to flip it upside down just because it helps me to work better that way. You don't have to do that. And I'm going to try to keep my ruler straight. Make sure you can see that. And I'm going to draw my first line. Okay? And then I'm going to continue that, working my way up. So I'm going to keep the first few just about the same, width apart. Then after a few, so I drew 3 lines, my next one, I'm going to spread out just a little bit more. Then I'm going to do that again, spread out a little bit more from that one. And then I'm going to make it a little further away this time. And then that's pretty much all the space I have. So if you notice, these are closer, and as it works its way up, they get a little bit further away. Then I'm going to actually turn my paper this way just because it'll make it easier to do this side. And I'm going to do the same thing. Now when I make these lines, I do want to connect them to the lines that are already there. So you really don't have to worry about spacing for this one because you've already done that here. So all you have to do is make sure your ruler is lined up to the lines that are already existing and draw from there. Turning my paper back the correct way. Now you notice we have our bricks going up. Well, they don't look like bricks yet, but they will. So now we're going to actually use our vanishing points. So to use your vanishing point, you have to line up the ruler to the vanishing point, meaning the ruler has to touch the vanishing point every time you draw. First, I recommend starting in the center. So the first line you draw, actually, I'm going to move this vanishing point over a little bit because I think it's not far enough over. So I'm actually going to put it here. I might have to adjust that one too. So I want it to be more in the center. So what I'm going to do is line up my ruler to the vanishing point, make sure it's straight. So I'm looking up here, making sure it's straight, making sure I like where it is. And then I'm going to start drawing my lines. I'm not going to draw a continuous line. I'm going to skip every other section so I can get that brick effect. So I'll draw my first line. Then I'm going to skip that second section. Draw my next line, skip the next one, and so on. Okay? So I've skipped every other. If you make a mistake and go outside the line like I have, just go back and fix. Now, the next step, I'm going to take my ruler again. I'm going to line it up to the vanishing point. And this time, I'm going to draw a new line. But of course, it's not going to be straight. I'm not going to draw in the same spot. I'm going to actually move the ruler over a bit. Now these lines are going to go on the sections that I did not draw in. So make sure they're not too close. You don't want it too close to the lines that are already existing. Try to space them out a bit. Alright, starting there. I'm going to start again at the bottom, but not in that first section because I already have a line there. So I'm going to go in the section that I did not draw in. And I'm going to skip every other section. Okay? Now again, line up the ruler to the vanishing point. Make sure the ruler is touching that vanishing point. Now this other line I'm going to do is going to make the rest of my brick that I started the first time. So you don't want to make it too wide. So I think this is a good width for my bricks. So the line is going to actually be here. So I'm thinking that's a good width. I don't want to make it too skinny. I want to make it pretty wide so it feels like a brick. Then I'm going to draw my line. And this one's going in the section that I started out with. Okay, now I still have a lot of space down here, so I'm going to do it one more time because I need to complete these bricks. So now I'm looking at this one to see how wide that's going to be, if I like that width. I think I do. So I'm going to line it up. Then I'm going to draw my line. And then I don't have any space to do any more. So now I'm just going to go ahead and jump over and finish the rest of this side of the wall. So here's the finished product of our bricks. So just make sure when you have your vanishing points that you line up the ruler to the vanishing point every time you draw. So this way it keeps your bricks in perspective, and it makes them feel like they're all heading toward the center, which is the floor. After you finish with your vanishing points, you can erase them. They're no longer needed. Our next step is to color. So hyperrealism. We didn't get a chance to discuss that. Hyperrealism is a really cool art technique. It started in the 70s where people started to create work that was so detailed it would almost look like a photo. We obviously won't be making something that is that detailed and that difficult that you won't be able to do, but we are going to do something in the realm of hyperrealism where it seems like it's kind of real, but obviously we know it's a drawing. So to kind of make that effect a little bit cooler or more effective, make it more effective, I'm going to use two different colors. So this dark green I'm actually going to use on my floor because things that are usually further away seem darker. And I'm going to use this lighter green on the border because things that are closer to us seem lighter. And you're only going to use this to make a pattern. So you're going to color every other square on your floor and every other square on your border. Do not color the bricks on the sides. Leave those white. If you hear my daughter in the background, that's just her just making noises, having fun. So do not mind the little laughs and little chuckles and little maybe even crying or coughing you hear in the background. So I'm going to go ahead and start the coloring on the floor and the border. You can watch and then I'll come back. So here's my finished coloring. So what I did again, I did the light color on the border because that's closest to us, and I did the dark green on the floor of the picture because that's supposedly further away. Our last step is to do some shading to really make it feel like this is a deep hole that we're looking into. So I have a charcoal pencil that I'll be using and a piece of paper towel to blend. If you do not have this, pencil works, but pencil is harder to blend. If you have a color pencil, that might work a little bit better, maybe even a crayon. Do not use a marker because markers do not blend. You cannot blend in anything with a marker. So again, you can use a color pencil, a pencil, and possibly even a crayon. I would recommend trying out different ones, different mediums on a clean sheet of paper to see what works best before you apply it to your paper to make sure what's going to work best for you. So first step, we want to fill in the bottom. We're not coloring it super dark. We want to still be able to see our floor, see our pattern, but we want it to be shaded so it feels very far away, and that the light that's up top isn't reaching it quite as much. So with my charcoal pencil, I'm holding it to the side. It's a pretty dark charcoal pencil, so it's gonna blend in pretty dark quickly. And I'm just gonna go across the entire floor with it, lightly coloring over all the white boxes and the green. The goal is to shade it in, but you want to make sure that all of the pattern still shows. So I'm just coloring in the bottom. And I'm only doing the floor, not doing anything else. And I know I'm going to need a little bit more, but I'm going to just start using a piece of the paper towel. I'm going to fold it around my finger, and I'm going to use that to blend. Now, that's my first layer. I do want it to go a bit darker. I recommend working in layers, doing a little bit at a time to see exactly how dark you want your floor to go before you actually go all the way. So I'm going to go ahead, add a few more layers, and then I'm going to start working my way up the walls. I'm not going to talk through this part. I'm just going to shade, so just watch it. I won't speed through it too quickly. I'll take it kind of slow so you can kind of see what I'm doing. Alright, so I hope as you watched you kind of understood how I created this depth. So again, first thing that's most important is that you layer. You can't get this way without layering, and blending is very hard without several layers, because when you put down your first layer, I don't know if you noticed, you can still really see the lines, but the more I layered and the more I built up on my paper towel, see the residue I have on my paper towel from the charcoal pencil, the more I had, it allowed it to blend better and less of the lines showed. So layering is really important. So I really recommend as you work, do not just dive in and start coloring super dark. Start off light, get your paper towel, blend it, do another layer, blend it, and as you do a few layers and you keep blending using the same area on your paper towel, it'll start to smooth out. It just takes some patience, a little bit of time, but I would say you could get this look in probably about 10 or 15 minutes. It wouldn't take too long to create it. I hope you really enjoyed looking at this video. I do have others, so take some time after watching this to go look back at videos I post. I post every single Monday. Please like, subscribe, and share to anyone you think would love to look at these videos and draw along with me. I really hope you enjoyed yourself, and before we sign off, we always want to make sure we sign our work. So using this Sharpie, just because we have a lot of dark colors, we really want to make sure we can see it. And I'm going to sign it right across the green and the white. So in the bottom right hand corner, I'm going to sign my name. And you want to make sure you always sign your work to take credit for your beautiful designs. And I want to thank you so much for making art with Mrs. Gordon.